Hi, I'm Richard Wood.
And I'm Susan Keogh.
There are a lot of nonlinear editing programs on the market today. One popular one is Apple's Final Cut Pro.
So in this module, we'll cover the basics of nonlinear editing with Final Cut Pro. Please note, we're really just covering the basics.
If you want to learn more, there are plenty of books on the market that delve further into editing. So let's get started.
Four program windows form the core of the Final Cut Pro interface: the browser, the viewer, the canvas, and the timeline.
Because the program combines so many editing and effects creation capabilities in a single application, each of these windows performs multiple functions. To avoid cluttering your screen with several windows and tools, every major window in Final Cut Pro uses tabs. Tabbed windows stack multiple functions into a single window.
Let's take a brief look at each of these four windows and their various functions, starting with the browser.
Think of the browser window as a file cabinet. This is the place where you organize and access all the media elements of your project. The main tab of the browser window is called the Project tab.
The Project tab will have all of your clips, which are the individual video and audio files. They'll have your sequences, which are a series of clips that have been arranged or edited together, and bins, essentially folders and subfolders you can use to organize your clips and sequences in a manner that works for you.
When you first create a new project, the browser will have a single empty sequence called Sequence 1. In addition to the Project tab, the browser window also contains the Effects tab.
The Effects tab contains all of Final Cut Pro's built-in effects, including transitions, special effects filters, audio filters, title generators, and more. You can apply these effects by simply dragging them onto a clip in an open sequence.
The window directly to the right of the browser is called the Viewer. The viewer is where you begin the editing process, reviewing the individual video and audio clips and defining how much of each clip you will use in your final edited sequence.
Transport controls located near the bottom of the viewer allow you to play, pause, or skip to a particular section of the clip. And the scrubber bar above that allows you to quickly navigate to any part of the clip.
To the right of the viewer is the Canvas window. If your viewer is the source monitor, then the Canvas acts as your record monitor. The Canvas is where you watch your edited sequences. The Canvas and timeline work together in that the Canvas always displays the frame at the current position of the timeline's playhead. The Canvas looks like the viewer and has many of the same controls.
You'll have separate tabs in the Canvas window for each open sequence in a project. You can create and open as many sequences in your project as you wish, and quickly switch between them by clicking on their tab in the Canvas window.
Directly below the viewer and the Canvas is the timeline. The timeline's like a container. It holds your individual video and audio clips in an edited order called a sequence. The timeline graphically displays your edited sequence as clips, chronologically arranged on multiple video and audio tracks along a time frame.
As Richard said earlier, the timeline and the canvas are linked together. Just as with the canvas, you can have multiple sequences open in your timeline, with each having its own tabbed window. Just click on the Sequences tab in the timeline to switch from one to another. And whatever sequence is active in the timeline window, well, that's going to be the one that's displayed in the canvas.
In addition to the four main program windows, there's one more window to be aware of. The audio meters show rising or falling bars in the left and right channels, corresponding to the levels of the audio clip being played in the viewer or canvas.
This helps you keep an eye on the level of your audio, as well as troubleshooting any audio problems, like, why can't I hear my audio?
Before you can edit anything in Final Cut Pro, or any other nonlinear system for that matter, you need media that is stored on your computer's hard drive.
Now, media is more than just the video and audio that you have on your source tape. Media refers to any content that you use in your project, including the video and audio from your tape, audio from a CD, still images created in programs like Adobe Photoshop, and any animated sequences.
The process of getting this media onto your computer is called digitizing or capturing. When capturing media, you'll be working with the Log and Capture window. To open the Log and Capture window, go to the File menu and scroll down and choose Log and Capture. Or you could use the keyboard shortcut.
Just like other computer programs, Final Cut Pro has many keyboard shortcuts for functions and tools within the program. Learning those keyboard shortcuts for the most common functions can make you a much faster editor.
The keyboard shortcut for opening the Log and Capture window is the Command key, sometimes called the Apple key, and the 8 key. Hold them both down simultaneously and the Log and Capture window will open.
The left half of the window is called the Preview section, and it has many of the same controls that appear in the Viewer window. There's a screen to view your footage, a set of playback or transport control buttons, and information displays that we'll explain when we start logging our tape.
The right half of the Capture window has 3 tabs: Logging, Clip Settings, and Capture Settings. The Capture Setting tabs allows you to set scratch disks, or where you would like your computer to store the media you capture. It's also where you would choose settings for the type of video hardware you have attached to your computer. Unless you're editing with several different video formats or using multiple or removable drives, chances are once you have these settings, you're not going to need to change them. But that can vary from shop to shop.
The next tab is the Clip Settings tab. The thing of most importance here is the Capture Format pop-up menu and the Audio Input Format pop-up menu. Before you log a single clip, you should decide what elements of the clip you want. Click on the Capture Format pop-up menu and decide from 3 options. Do you want just the audio, just the video, or both? If you're not sure, choose both and be safe. But if you know you only want the audio, then capturing the video just takes up valuable hard drive space.
Next, choose how you want to bring your audio in. MiniDV has 2 channels of audio, a left channel or channel 1 and a right channel or channel 2. Unless your camera has separate inputs for multiple mics, your audio is recorded on both channels. If this is the case, choosing the stereo option as your audio format is probably best. If your camera does have separate inputs, you may want channel 1 plus channel 2 or simply one of the channels by themselves.
Once you've set up your capture and clip settings, you're ready to begin logging. To get started, click on the Logging tab. At the top of this tab, you'll find the Log Bin button. Simply put, the Log Bin is a folder in the browser where the references for your logged and captured clips are stored. By default, the Project tab itself becomes the Log Bin, as indicated by the clapboard icon next to the project name.
Now, this is fine if you're working on a short project where you won't have too many clips to deal with, but the longer or more complex the project it is, where you have a lot of captured clips, having the Project tab as your Log Bin can quickly become an organizational nightmare. That's why it's nice to create a lot of bins, with each bin containing footage with some common characteristic, such as having one bin for each tape you shoot or another bin for footage from a particular scene or location. Whatever organization scheme makes sense to you.
There are 2 ways to create a new bin and set it as your log bin. First, you can simply click on the new bin icon next to the Log Bin button. A new bin will be created in the browser called Bin 1. And it will be automatically set as the Log Bin, with the clapboard icon now next to it. To change the name of the bin, click on the bin name in the browser once, then pause, and click on the name again. The name will be highlighted, and you can type your new name.
The second way of creating a new bin and setting it as your Log Bin is by clicking the File menu, scrolling down to New, and then choosing Bin, or by using the keyboard shortcut, the Command key plus the B key. A new bin is now in the browser. To set it as your Log Bin, move the mouse over the bin icon, and while holding down the Control key, click the bin icon. A pop-up window will appear with several choices. One of them is Set Logging Bin. Scroll down to this and let go of your mouse button. Now your new bin should have the clipboard icon next to it. Using the control key to reveal pop-up menus is a powerful feature that you should use throughout the application. In each of the 4 windows, control clicking on different elements will reveal specific menus that will allow you to work faster and more efficiently. Take some time to explore the different menus in each window that control click reveals.
Below the Log Bin button are information fields that you need to fill out for each clip as you log it. While many of the fields are more for your own organizational purposes, some fields are essential to your ability to later recapture your media. The most critical field is the reel.
Reel is another word for tape. The name that you put in the reel field is a special link between an actual source tape and the clips you're capturing. Different source tapes can and often do have the exact same timecode numbers on the tape, especially with DV, since by default the cameras will start recording with a timecode number of 000000. The only way to differentiate a clip on one tape with identical timecode numbers from a clip on another tape is by giving each tape a different reel name. What you call your tape is up to you. Just make sure that each tape has its own unique name and that you write that name on the tape label. If you ever have to recapture your media, you can get in trouble quickly if you have a stack of source tapes with no labels on them.
Under the Reel field is the name field. Now this is where you're going to type the name for each individual clip, but you can't type directly into the name field. Instead, the clip name is created by the information placed in the 3 fields below the name: the description field, the scene field, and the shot take field. Next to the fields, you'll see a checkbox. If the box is checked, whatever you type in these fields will appear in the name field. Use any or all 3 of the fields to name your clips. Just be sure that each clip has its own unique name, and one that'll help you know what the clip is without having to watch it.
This will be very important if you have a project with a lot of clips. The next step in the logging process is to mark the in and out points for each clip, or the beginning and end of each clip. Using the playback controls in the preview section, cue your source tape up to the start of the clip that you want to log. But don't be on the first frame of the clip. Give yourself some pad. Cue the tape to a spot maybe a few seconds before you actually want your clip to start. Remember, you can always edit out the excess, but you can't include more footage than you originally captured. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I have a cutaway shot that I want to put in my final sequence. It's a close-up of an actor, trim fader, and I want the clip to start right where he opens the cabinet. But instead of cueing my tape here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to back my tape up a few seconds right before he opens the cabinet. And then I'm going to stop my tape at that point. And here's where I'm going to mark my end point.
Once you've cued your tape, go ahead and mark an end point by clicking on the Mark In button near the bottom left of the preview section. Or better yet, use the keyboard shortcut I. Once you mark your endpoint, the time code of your endpoint appears in the field next to the Mark In button. Now, cue your tape to where you'd like the clip to end. And like Richard said, give yourself some pad. Excellent. Now mark your out point by clicking the Mark Out button, or by using the keyboard shortcut O. The out point time code will appear in the out point field. Now the duration of this clip, how long it is, will appear in the top left field of the preview window.
Okay, you're almost ready to capture your media. If you look to the bottom right of the Log and Capture window, you'll see 4 buttons. The first is Log Clip, and then there are 3 Capture buttons: Capture Clip, Capture Now, and Capture Batch. Pressing the Capture Clip button will capture the clip you have just logged using the in and out points you've marked. This is great if you want to capture a single clip or one clip at a time. The Capture Now button will start capturing any signal that is hooked up to your computer. This doesn't require in points or out points to be set, and it'll keep capturing until you hit the Escape key. Because it doesn't require in and out points, you're going to primarily use the Capture Now button when your source footage is on something other than DV that doesn't use timecode, such as VHS or Hi8. When using a source with timecode, it's much more accurate to go ahead and mark ins and outs and use either Capture Clip or the next button, which is Capture Batch.
The Capture Batch feature is the most efficient way of bringing media into Final Cut Pro. Instead of immediately capturing the clip you log, like with Capture Clip, it creates offline clips that you capture at a later time. Offline clips, as opposed to online clips, don't have any media linked to them. What they do have is all the relevant information about the clip, its in points, out points, the reel, and any logging notes. After you've logged as many offline clips as you want, you can then go back and batch capture them. Final Cut Pro automates the whole process for you, even prompting you when to change tapes.
Okay, so here's the actual process of batch capturing. Go ahead and log each clip like we've described before, but instead of clicking on the Capture Clip button, click on the Log Clip button. Once you've confirmed the clip's name, a new clip will appear in your logging bin with a red slash through it. The red slash indicates the clip is offline or has no media associated with it. Continue to log the rest of your clips in the same way, clicking Log Clip after each or by using the keyboard shortcut F2. When you are done, you will have several offline clips in your browser. At this point, click on the empty gray area in the far left of your browser. Now go to the File menu and choose Set Logging Bin. This will reset your project as your logging bin. And now you're finally ready to batch capture. Go back to the Log and Capture window and click the Capture Batch button. The Batch Capture dialog box will appear. Make sure the Capture pop-up menu is set to All Items in Logging Bin, and then click OK in the bottom right of the box. The capture process will begin. Final Cut Pro will prompt you to put the correct tape in the deck and will automatically queue up and capture each clip. Now that you have media captured, you're ready to begin editing. The first step is to make sure you have an open sequence. If you can see the timeline, then you have an open sequence. Remember, sequences are stored in the browser window along with your clips. By default, when you start a new project, an empty sequence titled Sequence 1 will be created. If you don't see the timeline, then you don't have an open sequence. Go ahead and double-click on your sequence to open it. If you want to create additional sequences, go to the File menu, then choose New, and then Sequence, or use the keyboard shortcut Command plus the N key.
The next step is to load a clip into the viewer window. How do you do that? Just double-click a clip in your browser. Now you should see your clip in the viewer. You can now play or scroll through your clip using the transport controls.
4, 3.
The scrubber bar is the space between the clip video and the transport controls. The yellow triangle with a line is called the playhead, and it indicates your position within the clip. Now you can use the scrubber bar to move quickly back and forth through the clip. Simply click and hold the mouse in the scrubber bar area and move the mouse side to side to navigate through the clip.
Additionally, you can use the keyboard to play a clip. The spacebar functions as a play button
We live in a cynical world.
and a pause button. The keyboard also has some very powerful transport controls with the J, K, and L keys. K is the pause button, and L plays the clip forward.
Cynical world, and we work in a business.
J plays the clip backwards, Each time you press the L or J key, the speed increases.
A cynical world.
If you hold down the K key with the L or J, you will be able to scrub through the clip or play the clip very slowly. This can be extremely useful if you're trying to locate a precise frame. In addition to the J, K, and L keys, the arrow keys can be used to advance or move backwards one frame at a time through a clip.
The next step is to make an endpoint within your clip. Now when you logged your clip, you set an endpoint a few seconds before the frame you really wanted. And remember, this is a very important habit to practice. Now, however, is when you'll want to cut out that excess. Play your clip in the viewer and choose the point where you want the clip to start. Now press the Mark In button or use the keyboard shortcut, the I key, to mark an endpoint for your clip. This will be the first frame of this clip that will be in your sequence.
Next, choose the point where you want your clip to end and mark your out point by clicking the Mark Out button or using the keyboard shortcut, the O key. You can always reset your ins and out points at any time by simply repeating the process and marking new in and out points.
And if you want to delete an in or an out point, use the keyboard shortcut Option plus I to clear an in point, and Option O clears your out point.
Next, click on the timeline. It should be empty at this point. Just like the viewer, you should see a yellow triangle with a line extending from it. This is the timeline playhead, and it indicates where in the sequence you currently are. Drag the playhead to the start of the timeline by clicking in the top portion of the timeline, hold down the mouse button, and drag the playhead to the left. Once the playhead is at the start of the timeline, go ahead and mark an endpoint here by clicking on the Mark In button in the Canvas window, or by simply pressing I.
With 3 points set, an in and out point for your clip, and an in point for the sequence, you're ready to edit. With your mouse, click and hold the center of the clip you have in the viewer. A small transparent box appears where you click. Still holding the mouse, drag the box over the Canvas window. A selection of options appears. For our purposes, we're only concerned with the top two, Insert and Overwrite. Go ahead and drag the box over the Insert button and release your mouse. Look at the timeline. Now you'll see a block positioned at the start of your timeline. This block represents the first shot of your sequence. If you look at it closely, it includes the name of the clip on it. If you scroll the timeline playhead over the block, you will see the clip in the Canvas window. The same transport controls that worked in the log and viewer windows also work in the timeline in Canvas.
Remember, the timeline and Canvas are linked together. The timeline is a graphical representation of all the shots edited together in the Canvas. When you play a sequence in the timeline, you will see the image in the Canvas. And when you play a clip in the Canvas, you will see the playhead in the timeline move.
Let's edit some more clips into our sequence by repeating the process. First, double-click a clip in the browser, opening it in the viewer. Second, mark in and out points for the clip in the viewer. Next, mark an in point in the timeline. Finally, drag the clip from the viewer into the canvas over the Insert button and release. Now you can see we have a second clip in our sequence. Now I'm going to add several more clips to our sequence by repeating this process.
Up until now, we have been inserting all of our clips into the sequence. Another method of editing clips into a sequence is called overwrite. There's a very important difference between insert and overwrite, and this difference can best be seen by taking a closer look at the timeline.
As you can see, we have several clips in our timeline sequence. We've been editing in order, putting down one clip, then the next, etc. But one of the greatest advantages to nonlinear editing is that it allows you to edit out of sequence. You can go back and easily put in new clips in between existing ones. So let's move our timeline playhead just before the clip called CU Mic 4 and just after the clip called OS Scoop 2. And we'll go ahead and mark an endpoint. Now I'll load up another clip into the viewer, and this clip is called Wide Shot Mic and Scoop 1. We'll mark an endpoint and an out point, and then drag it into the canvas over the Insert button and release.
Looking back at the timeline, you see that the new clip has been inserted after OS Scoop 2, and that the clip called CU Mic 4 has been pushed back along with all of the clips that followed it. Now let's see what happens when we use the overwrite function. First, let's revert this sequence to where it was before that last edit. A very handy shortcut that you'll find in many applications, including Final Cut Pro, is the undo command. simply press the Command key plus Z to undo that last action. So again, I have my in point in the timeline right before the clip called CU Mic 4. I have an in and an out point in the viewer. Now I drag the clip into the canvas, and this time I'm going to place the mouse over the overwrite button and release. Let's see what happened in the timeline. Instead of pushing the clip called CU Mic 4 back along with all the clips that followed it, the overwrite edit actually wrote over a portion of the clip called CU Mic 4 with the new clip called Wide Shot Mic and Scoop 1. I'll undo that last edit again so you can watch it. The fundamental difference is that insert editing changes the duration of the sequence, since the new clip moves everything over to the right and adds its duration to the sequence's total duration. The result is more footage in the sequence and timeline. Overwrite, on the other hand, keeps the duration of the sequence exactly the same, since it's just replacing whatever clip it overwrites with itself. No clips are moved over to compensate, and the sequence's duration stays the same.
One more note about insert and overwrite editing. To perform these edits, we've told you to drag the clip from the viewer onto the canvas. And when you do that, editing options appear. Insert edit is indicated by a yellow box with a triangle pointing right. An overwrite edit is a red box with a triangle pointing down. Final Cut gives you faster ways to insert and overwrite edit. In the lower left of the canvas, you'll see the same symbols for insert and overwrite. Once you mark your in and out points, simply click on the appropriate symbol and the edit's performed. Want something even faster? Well, there are two keyboard shortcuts as well. F9 will insert a clip, and F10 overwrites.
So far, we've been editing clips using both video and audio. But what if you only want to use the video from a clip, or just its audio? Final Cut Pro allows you to edit videos separately from audio through a process called patching.
Look to the left of the timeline, and you will notice where each track is labeled. V1 means video 1, A1 and A2 mean audio 1 and audio 2. Next to those labels are lowercase tabs that also say V1, A1, and A2. These tabs are called breakaway tabs because when you click them, they break away from the fixed video and audio track labels. Click on them again and they reattach to the track labels. If a breakaway tab is disconnected from the track label, that portion of your source clip will not be edited into the timeline. Let's look at an example of this. In our sequence, we have a shot of Scoop talking to Mike, and in our viewer, we have a reaction shot of Trim Fader. I mark in and out points in my viewer and mark an in point in the timeline. And choose Overwrite. Now the sequence has Scoop and Mike talking to each other, but when the reaction shot of Trim cuts in, the audio cuts out.
I love you. Looking for a little bit of attention.
Looking at the timeline, you can see that both the video and audio of the reaction shot of Trim was overwritten into the sequence. Now let's undo that edit and go over to the breakaway tabs and click A1 and A2, causing them to separate from the track labels. Now since the video breakaway tab is the only one connected, only the video from the source clip will be edited into the timeline. Again, let's override edit the clip into the sequence, but this time only the video goes in. And if we play the sequence, we'll see the reaction shot, but still hear Scoop talking to Mike.
Mike Raffoni, I love you. And we have to work this thing out. We have to stick together. We have to have faith in each other. I was just looking for a little bit of attention.
And when we look at the timeline, we can see that only the video track includes Trim reaction shot, while the audio tracks remain untouched.
In simple terms, whatever breakaway tab is connected will be edited into the timeline, and whatever is disconnected will remain unaffected. Final Cut Pro allows you to work with up to 99 layers of video and audio tracks. The default setup is a single video track and 4 audio tracks, but adding additional tracks is a simple process. First, Select the Sequence menu from the top of the screen. Then, scroll down to Insert Tracks. A menu will appear, giving you the option to choose how many and what types of tracks you wish to add. It'll also ask you where you would like the track to appear, either before the bass track or the first track, or after the last track. Go ahead and click OK, and the new tracks will be created. Once you have multiple video or audio tracks, you will once again use the breakaway tabs to indicate which track you would like your source clip's audio or video to go to. For example, let's say I wanted to add music under this scene. I'd go ahead, load a music clip into my viewer, I'd mark my in point and my out point, and I'd go into my sequence, decide where I want my music to come in, and mark an in point there, and then I'd go and overwrite edit. Now if you look in the timeline, you can see that the audio tracks from my music clip have overwritten the audio tracks from the scene. And when we play the clip, you can see that we have indeed replaced the audio with music. I'm going to go ahead and undo that edit. Remember, pressing Apple Z. Now I'm going to go back to the breakaway tabs, and I'm going to click on the A1 breakaway tab and drag it down to the A3 audio track. I'm going to do the same thing with the A2 breakaway tab and drag it to the A4 audio track. I'll mark a new endpoint on my sequence, and then again overwrite edit the music in. Now if we look back at the timeline, you'll see that the music clip's audio has been placed on tracks 3 and 4, and that the scene's audio has remained untouched on tracks 1 and 2. And when we play the sequence, we hear both the dialogue and the music.
As you begin to add more footage to your sequence and create additional tracks, your timeline can quickly become a little crowded, making it difficult to see individual clips. There are a couple things you can do to help navigate through the timeline.
Near the bottom left of your timeline, there's a small window with several notches. This window allows you to zoom in or out of the timeline. Click the mouse to the left of this window, and the timeline expands. Click it to the right, and it contracts. An expanded timeline can help you if you have several small clips that you are trying to edit. A contracted timeline makes it easier to move quickly to different locations in your sequence. As the timeline expands, you will need to use the scroll bar at the bottom of the timeline to progress through your sequence. 4 more keys will help you quickly navigate through the timeline. The Home key takes you to the start of your sequence, and the End key takes you to the end of your sequence. The up arrow will go to the previous edit, in point, out point, or marker that is backward in the timeline, while the down arrow will go to the next edit, in or out point, or marker that is forward in the timeline. If you're careful when marking your in and out points, you may never have to make changes to clips once you have them in your sequence. But oftentimes, you will need to do some minor trimming of your clips once they're already in the timeline. There are many ways to trim clips in the timeline. Some are more precise than others, but the simplest way is through extending or reducing clips by dragging.
By grabbing hold of either end of a clip and dragging the link in either direction, a clip's duration can be made longer or shorter. Here's how the process works. Make sure the selection tool has been selected from the tool palette. It's the one that looks like an arrow. Now choose a clip in the timeline that you wish to extend or reduce. Position the selection tool and let it hover over the center of an edit point, or the area where 2 clips meet. A symbol with 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal arrows appears. If you want to reduce or shorten the length of the clip, drag the end of the clip into itself. A display appears to the right, showing the overall clip duration and the clip adjustment in seconds and frames. At the same time, the canvas will give you a visual reference to the adjustments being made. When you do this, a gap is created between the clip you shortened and the clip adjacent to it. To get rid of the gap, click and drag a box over the remaining clips following in the timeline, then release the mouse and move it to the first clip in that selection of clips. A crossed arrows symbol appears. Click and drag the entire selection until it is adjacent with the previous clip.
If you wish to extend the length of a clip, you must first have a gap between the clip you want to extend and the clip adjacent to it. To create a gap, once again, choose the selection tool, highlight and drag several clips in the timeline, move to the front of them till you have that crossed arrow symbol, click and drag that selection further down the timeline. If there are too many clips in your timeline that highlighting and dragging them all becomes just problematic, you can always insert any old clip between the clip you wish to extend and the adjacent clip. Now, select that clip you just inserted. Now press the big delete key under the F11 and F12 keys. The clip will be removed with the gap remaining. Once you have a gap next to your clip, you can extend it the exact same way you reduced it, by positioning the selection tool and letting it hover over the edge of the clip, and then dragging the end of the clip out.
For fine control when dragging, hold down the Command key. This will reduce the dragging speed significantly. If you find it impossible to extend a clip's length though, it's most likely because there's no more material to extend in the original captured source. An old adage in production is your viewers are much more willing to accept bad video than they are bad audio. Audio that can't be heard, or worse yet, hurts to listen to, is one sure way to get your viewer to tune out. Once your audio is recorded, you're more or less stuck with it. And while it's possible to improve the quality through the use of filters and other means, in general, the only way to get good sound is to record it properly in the first place.
That said, Final Cut Pro does make it possible to create a good sound mix in your productions. The sound mix refers to the way all the audio elements blend together to create the overall soundtrack. For our purposes, we're going to look at the simplest way Final Cut Pro allows you to adjust the audio levels of each clip. Audio levels are crucial to get right. Set them too low and you can't hear your content. Set them too high and the audio will distort, break up, and be unlistenable. To the right of the timeline, you'll see the audio meters. When you play a clip with audio in the viewer or in the timeline in Canvas, you will see rising and falling bars in the audio meter. This indicates the clip's audio level. As a basic rule, with digital audio, you never want your audio levels to peak above the -6 dB. And many experts suggest it should never go above -12 dB. What this means is that the very loudest point of a clip, like someone screaming or a cymbal crash, should never go above -12 to -6 on the audio meter.
The majority of your audio should fall near the -18 dB range on the audio meter. If your audio is going above -6, you need to drop the levels. And if the majority of your audio is falling below -18, you need to raise your levels. Changing the levels is simple. You can change a clip's levels before you edit it into a sequence, or as in our case, after you've put your sequence together. With an already edited sequence, just double-click the clip you want to change in the timeline, and that reopens it in the viewer. Then click on the Audio tab in the top of the viewer. You should see a graphical representation of the clip's audio. Near the top of this window, you'll see a setting for levels. By default, the levels are set to 0 dB. Now don't confuse this with the actual decibel levels of your audio. This just indicates how much you're boosting or dropping your audio levels. So 0 dB here indicates you aren't changing your levels at all. By moving the slide bar left or right, you change your audio level. Moving the slider bar to the left produces a negative number and lowers your audio level. Moving the slider to the right produces a positive number and increases your audio level. You can also just type the value into the levels box.
You change the levels of an audio clip before you edit them into a sequence in exactly the same way. The only difference is if you change a clip's level after editing, like we did, it only affects the one occurrence of the clip in the timeline. You may use that exact same clip later in the timeline, but the audio levels for that particular instance will not be affected. If you know before editing that a clip's levels will need to be raised or lowered, you may want to fix them before you edit. That way, every time you edit that clip into a sequence, it'll go in with the new audio levels.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. Your piece is edited and the audio levels are good. Now you're ready to put the finished sequence back onto tape. This process is called output.
The simplest way to output your piece to tape is to set your playhead at the start of your sequence, press record on your tape deck, and then play your sequence. But Final Cut Pro gives you another way to output to tape that gives your piece a much more professional look. This is the print to video function. With the print to video function, your project can be given a slate or a name, color bars can be added, and black can be placed at the beginning and end of your piece. You can even set it to loop it several times if you like.
Another nice feature of print to video is it will check for possible playback problems like unrendered effects or dropped frames. And if there are any problems, print to video will fix them before your piece goes onto tape.
To use the print to video function, first make sure you have the sequence open and that the timeline has been selected by clicking anywhere in it. Then select the File menu at the top left and scroll down to Print to Video and release the mouse. A box will appear, giving you many options to choose from. Check those boxes that apply to your specific needs. The order the options are listed is the order they will appear on your tape. Once you select an option, type in the duration for the amount you wish to record. For instance, let's say you wanted color bars for 10 seconds. Check the color bars box and type in 10 seconds in the duration box. If you wanted a slate, check the slate box, type in the duration, choose text in the pop-up menu next to it, and then in the box next to that, type what you want your slate to read. Now go to the Media section of the Print to Video window. You'll see a Print pop-up box. Choose Entire Media if you wish to record your full sequence, or choose In to Out if you only want to record a small part of your video based on the ins and outs that you've already set in your sequence. Underneath that, you can choose whether or not you want your piece to loop and how many times. And to the right, where it says Trailer, you can decide if you want black at the end of your piece and how long. Once you've made all the selections you want, go ahead and click OK. The computer will pause as all the elements are put together. Once this is done, Final Cut Pro will prompt you to press record on your deck. Do so, and then press OK. Now, just sit back and enjoy your video.
Hello. Do you have to do that?
May I please remind you that it does not say RSVP on the Statue of Liberty?
Look, we live in a cynical world. A cynical world. And we work in a business with tough competitors. Scoop.
Mike, Raffoni, I love you. And we have to work this thing out. We have to stick together. We have to have faith in each other. I was just looking for a little bit of attention.
Look, it was just an unashamedly pro-life skit. For 6 clowns.
Mike, shut up. You had me at hello, okay? You had me at hello.
And there you go. Remember, this has been a real basic overview of editing with Final Cut Pro. We encourage you to explore the full potential of the program.
So until then, get editing.